In fashion news, we now know why Jim Harbaugh wears those glasses every game. It's to see that tiny little Michigan score on the scoreboard.
And they're calling it the Deep South's newest rivalry, Dan. That's right. It's Auburn versus the first down marker. Ooh, very fierce, very fierce.
Oh, that's right. It is now time to
Wake up, college football.
Chaos. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, I think everything's fine. I had a fine Saturday. Nothing went particularly disastrous for me.
I had a great Saturday.
Yeah.
I got to watch Oregon lose convincingly.
To whom?
It's predictable.
To whom?
Yes.
To whom?
The standard. You know, let's just make this show all about that
You
game.
will fear the tree, sir. You will fear the damn tree. In all sincerity, thank you for making Christian McCaffrey great again.
God,
I didn't think it could happen.
Hurt so much.
I didn't think it could happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
4 top 10 teams lose? Is that correct?
5.
5 top 10 teams lose.
Count them off.
Okay, so I DVR'd the Clemson game, so maybe I haven't seen it.
So Clemson loses.
Yeah.
Michigan loses. Washington loses.
Yep. Texas A&M.
Texas A&M loses. Auburn loses.
Auburn loses. That is 5.
And it could have been worse. Louisville was losing at the end of the third quarter to Wake
12-10,
Forest. Penn State was losing in the fourth quarter to Indiana. Wisconsin and Alabama, you guys did great. We're very proud of you.
Yay.
We're very, very proud.
Which loss, which outcome do you think is the most significant in terms of preventing that team from being in the playoff conversation?
I think Washington is the team that has the hardest road now because starting with the very first playoff ranking, the committee had clearly said something about what they thought about Washington, and it was not particularly complimentary. Right. So the fact that they now have to climb a very steep mountain that they've made for themselves, they also potentially have to do it without their best 2 defenders.
Yeah. Azim Victor being the headliner,
and Joe Mathis. So that's not ideal.
No.
I feel, but the best possible scenario for Washington is this. They went out, and they're going to get to play Wazoo in the Apple Cup. Wazoo right now, undefeated in Power 5 play, as we like to say, because that, tells you everything.
And Eastern Washington
tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
If they can play USC again in the Pac-12 championship game,
which is possible,
and they need some things to happen in the Pac-12 South for that to happen. Maybe you can make the argument, okay, we have one loss, but we avenged it, therefore we still deserve to.
And if they can do so demonstrably against USC. So I don't think Washington's out of it. Let's start with the number 2 team after that, though, because I thought USC played a really great game.
Yes.
To not take anything away from USC, it was not Washington merely losing because of injury and inconsistency on offense. Dory Jackson was great on defense. Porter Gustin was unstoppable along that USC front. And offensively, Sam Darnold, even with a couple of mistakes, one of those picks was not his fault at all. Correct.
I mean, this game was only as close as it was because USC had 2 guys slip at very inopportune times.
This is true. So yeah, this is absolutely correct. USC, a great performance. Clemson, though.
Okay.
Less of a great performance than USC. A Herculean effort from Deshaun Watson, though he did have 3 picks, a couple of which were in not ideal places.
Yeah, all 3 of those interceptions came in pit territory.
Right.
2 of them very close to the goal line.
Yeah.
He already has as many picks this year as he did all of last year, including the playoffs.
Right.
And that's we're talking 100 plus fewer pass attempts.
Correct.
So that is not the direction you want your interception rate to be going by.
So the story of this game is a terrific effort, even with the mistakes from Deshaun Watson. A disappointing effort, to say the least, from Clemson on the ground.
Yeah.
A disappointing effort from Clemson on defense. Nate Peterman threw all over this team. James Conner with some huge conversions. He goes for over 120 yards, I believe. And just questionable at best calls in this game, I would say.
Yeah, 9 penalties for 101 yards against
it was sloppy.
Clemson. Clemson also had that weird play in the first half. The same thing that happened against Troy, where they have that fumble near the goal line. And this time, they called the play as it was for Pitt and then reviewed it and said it was clearly not. I don't know. I mean, thanks, refs, for giving us more things to talk about.
Swing,
so we've got something there.
What do you got? Explain this.
This is the box of cliches.
A box of cliches.
And I just feel like with such a chaotic weekend, we need some like stability in our lives. And what better than boring old football cliches to do that? So I'm just gonna.
It's such a nice box.
Oh
too.
yeah, this costs $200. We're gonna have this for sale on wakeupcollegefootball.net after the show. All right. So just go ahead and pick one out. And the goal of this is you're gonna pick out a cliche and decide a game that it applies to from this weekend.
It's hard to go a whole season without a loss.
Ooh.
Bow down to Washington.
Okay.
We want Bama. Did you see the sign outside of that game?
Yeah.
Washington fan wants Bama.
Yeah.
To keep playing well.
Okay.
Just because it's high-level football.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Going undefeated is very difficult, but you would think against the schedule that they've had, it might be slightly easier than most teams to go undefeated. Also, it applies to Clemson.
Yeah, I suppose so. Clemson has been playing with fire a lot this year.
They've been playing the NC State game.
Yeah, they were 5-0 in one-score games this year. They're 5-1 now.
Yeah.
A lot of turnovers, a lot of sort of similar problems from week to week.
And Pitt is a team that.
But maybe maybe Clemson will use this as another football cliche. It's not in there, so I don't feel bad.
Okay.
They needed this loss to get them right, to turn things around.
Get them focused.
This is a good loss.
Good loss.
Good team loss.
Quality.
Right, I'm gonna take a turn.
All right.
Defense wins championships. Defense wins championships.
To whom does this apply?
Not a lot of great defense played yesterday, but I will give it to Penn State.
Okay.
In the second half of this game, Indiana goes up 31-28. After that, this is what the Penn State defense did. Indiana goes 3 and out. Indiana goes 4-play turnover on downs.
Okay.
And then they get a sack, fumble, touchdown to ice the game. In the fourth, the Penn State defense has not been fantastic from start to finish in games this year.
Yes.
But in the fourth quarter, they absolutely get it done.
Yep.
They clamp down when they need to. They make the big plays. Penn State is right now has a very reasonable shot to get into the Big Ten championship game. I honestly don't know what we do with this Penn State team if A, it works out that way and they go to that game, and B, they win. I don't know if this team makes the playoff.
So it would be a Penn State team. So they need Ohio State to beat Michigan.
Yes.
So they need Ohio State to beat Michigan.
And if that happens,
and to win out.
If Penn State doesn't lose to Michigan State or Rutgers, we have to say these things, even though they feel extremely unlikely. Also,
they almost lost Indiana, though.
Also, Michigan State, way to take it out on Rutgers. Way to really just take it out on Rutgers yesterday. Yeah.
So that would give Penn State a record of 11-2.
Correct.
With a win over Wisconsin. Potentially in the Big Ten championship game, and Ohio State, and a no doubt about it loss to Michigan,
and a close loss to Pitt.
A pretty good Pitt.
A Pitt team that now at least we can say is capable of killing giants.
It would be difficult to leave that Penn State team out.
It would.
It would be very difficult.
But it would also be easy somehow.
It would also be easy.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
It's so weird.
Yeah.
But you know what? They killed Iowa, which looks better now.
Oh, all right. Well, this is where we talk about that game.
I'm going to somehow fit this next.
Oh, that's good. I see what you're doing here.
I'm going to reverse it.
I appreciate that.
Michigan, Iowa.
I bet it'll work.
It works really well. Insert team just wanted it more.
Oh, no.
Iowa just wanted it more. You could really tell. You don't just walk into the Hornets nest.
Boy.
It is Kinnick Stadium, where they don't have a single Big Ten win this year.
Now they do. Now they do. Oh, God.
Okay, so Michigan was atrocious on offense last night.
Yeah.
And they defensively did a great job against a underwhelming Iowa offense, but Iowa did enough.
Unidimensional Iowa offense.
Unidimensional. Again, though, I go back to this.
Yeah,
Iowa just wanted it more.
Yep.
No, I think Iowa completed passes to non-running backs for a total of 14 yards in this game.
That's a first down.
Yeah.
That's a first down.
Going into this game, I said to myself, if Iowa's defense plays just an excellent, excellent game, how many points does the offense need to beat Michigan? I thought 24.
You were wrong.
I was wrong.
You're wrong.
Needed 14.
It was what a perfectly Iowa special teams game this was. They get They get points from special teams in the sense that they pin a punt, and that leads to a safety. Let's just revel in the route to 14 points.
Yeah.
That Iowa took.
2.
That would be
3.
safety.
Yeah.
Followed by touchdown with a missed 2-point conversion.
Yes, 8.
Field goal. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It is absolutely the blackjack hand where you're like, all right, I'm starting with 6. Hit me 2, hit me 3, just like low cards, and you're like, I think we're out of. There are no more cards in the deck, sir. Yeah, I'm on 17, so I get to keep hitting if I want.
I'm sort of relieved that a Michigan team can show the struggles of their offense before doing it against Alabama in the playoff.
God.
That's at least a nice step for this season.
I mean, here's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Michigan is still a very good, very dangerous team. I think Michigan can probably still give Ohio State a very good game, just because of what that game is, and because of what Michigan can do on the defensive side of the ball. Wilton Speight is probably not a good enough quarterback at this point in his career to make you a top 4 team.
Right.
And that's not as much shade as it sounds like, I hope. But these are his numbers against the combination of Colorado, Penn State, Wisconsin, and Iowa, which are by far the 4 best teams Michigan's played this year.
Yeah.
3 touchdowns total, 2 interceptions, 55% completion rate, 6 yards an attempt. Those are pedestrian, like, oh, you play for which Big Ten? You play for Illinois? You play for Indiana? Like, those are not Jim Harbaugh quarterback whisperer numbers. They just aren't.
No, he feels like the shooter that's always left in the corner.
Yeah.
And he's got 2 other stars on the team, and then they both get hurt. And he's like, well, it's my team now. And
So he's
not
Harrison
a great
Barnes.
He's Harrison Barnes.
Jeez, this got dark.
Okay, do you want to go into this? Into the cliche department?
All right.
What do we got? Iowa just wanted it more.
All right.
What do we got?
They're better than their record indicates.
Oh, okay.
I think this is Ole Miss.
I was going to say Ole Miss.
I think this is Ole Miss. You have feelings on Ole Miss.
Okay, so Ole Miss, Shea Patterson was wonderful yesterday. He led a 4th quarter comeback on the road against Texas A&M. Was consistently, he looked comfortable. He looked, especially as the game went on, like he looked prepared.
Yep.
And that's a huge testament to Hugh Freeze and the offensive game plan. Akeem Judd ran for, I think, 100 yards, which is a very unusual thing for Ole Miss's offense to rush the ball with any sort of success. It's promising. Texas A&M and their play calling and Jake Hubenek, they're not going to go particularly far. There's something about Texas A&M in November that is quite unfortunate.
Yeah. The other team I think you could maybe apply this to is maybe Georgia.
Yeah.
Georgia has been in a lot of close games that, like, you lost to Vanderbilt, and I know I have to bring that up literally every time I have the opportunity to. But Georgia has shown strides on the defensive side of the ball. They're still pretty beat up on the offensive line. Jacob Eason, I am still not super wowed by, but shows flashes of tremendous potential.
Yeah.
And really, Georgia's just got a win that they needed to. Something to give them a little bit of confidence, a little bit of kick in the pants. Georgia Tech might also be in this category as well.
Man.
The ACC almost with the exception of Clemson and Louisville.
Yeah.
You can pretty much say they're better than their record says.
I was gonna say the other team other than Ole Miss is USC. USC loses early in ugly fashion. They're a different team with
Is
Sam
there anybody USC lost to this season that
Stanford.
you think? Okay.
I think Sam Darnold playing the way he's played these past few weeks. They played at home a lot until last night, but he proved that he can win a huge game on the road. So I think it's probably Stanford. The Utah game he played, and they just lost late. He's not beating Alabama, so I think they could be like an 8-2 team.
Technically, Notre Dame is probably better than their record indicates, but I'm not going to say that.
Who cares?
I'm not going to say that. Hey, you won. You won 2 games in a row now.
Yes. Do you want to keep going cliches, or do you just want to start skipping around?
Yeah, you pick. Let's do one more. Let's do one more cliche. We got more, but
you have to play a full 60 minutes.
full 60
So we want Texas
minutes.
Tech.
Yeah, that's boy. Yep.
Missed extra point?
Missed extra point that could have tied the game against Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be Texas Tech.
Yeah, the Texas Tech offense and defense never really, when the defense starts making stops, the offense looks pressured and sort of garbagey. When the offense is looking dominant, the defense lets everything through. I would also say Clemson.
Clemson might be in this category. Wake Forest might be in this category because you will. I think if you look at this, I think Card Chronicle had a good Twitter joke on about this. About like, hey, if you're the selection committee and you're only watching Twitter and not this game, Louisville had control the entire time. Don't worry. Wake Forest played super well.
Yeah.
They did not have the personnel or the touchdowns necessary to beat Louisville for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
That's considering, that's what we're saying about Wake Forest in 2016.
Right.
That shows tremendous improvement.
Yeah, I would also say that game, if nothing else, showed us that Louisville can turn it on against okay teams.
Yep.
But if they play as sloppily as they did those first 3 quarters, they are going to get trounced by somebody much better than Wake Forest.
Does that team exist left on their schedule?
Alabama in the playoff?
It's not Kentucky.
No, I mean, they're almost assuredly going to be in the playoff this coming week when the rankings come out.
You think so?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. I mean, that's the most contentious thing you've said all week.
Why would they not be?
Who are you putting them ahead of? Are you putting them ahead of Clemson?
Probably not.
Okay.
I'd probably have them in their 4th after Ohio State and maybe Clemson.
Okay.
Because Michigan losing in the fashion that they did, Washington losing in the fashion that they did, Penn State, I'm not there yet.
Okay.
Wisconsin, I'm not there yet. Louisville drilled Florida State.
Okay.
And they have an opportunity to beat Houston down the coming week. That's all I got. That's all I got.
That's it. Well, I think what this reflects is that as chaotic as this week was, a lot of people were saying yesterday, it's not really going to mean much in terms of like, we're going to basically reshuffle who's where. And the top is not moving anywhere. Part of that is that the 8-9 teams lost. And I think if Auburn wins that Georgia game that they should have won, on paper at least, definitely not the way they played it on the field, because you have to get more than 20 yards in the second half, it turns out. I think they are definitely a candidate to be that team that everybody screams and hollers like, oh, SEC bias, blah, 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 blah. But without that, it's sort of like Wisconsin's probably not getting moved ahead of the two teams that it lost to. Who else can you, like, Louisville's the best candidate, I guess, but even them.
We are missing one lost team from a Power 5 conference. West
Virginia? West Virginia, as of now, the playoff committee thinks should be behind Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
Right.
So I
would argue that Oklahoma State's a one-loss team as well. It should be considered as such.
Okay. Sure. That's not what the record says.
Right.
And I think even then it sort of papers over the fact that they struggled so badly with Central Michigan.
Correct.
At home.
You're right.
So there's that. But they did beat Pitt. So transitive win over Clemson. Pitt? Yeah. Okay. Let's see
Penn State.
Yes.
And Penn State.
So therefore Ohio State, and therefore you've almost beat Pitt.
Let's crown Oklahoma State now.
I just feel like whether or not you think West Virginia deserves to be in this conversation,
right.
It feels pretty squarely like the playoff committee is like, don't pin your hopes on it.
Right. They're going to need to blow out the rest of their schedule. Yeah. But I will say this about West Virginia. Turning the ball over 4 times and allowing over 500 yards of offense and winning is very difficult. It is very difficult. Like the degree of difficulty is very high.
That's true. You want to get
on the road. Yeah.
Good job.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other results you want to run down?
Wazoo looked very comfortable in beating down Cal late at night in Pac-12 after dark. They scored 60+, and defensively they were really, really good, all things considered, against what this Cal offense can do. Otherwise, in the Big 12, Oklahoma beat Baylor, and Seth Russell, sorry to see him go down with the leg injury that's going to cost him his season. Oklahoma looked good, and they're a much better team once they have Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon in the mix.
Alabama.
Alabama.
I don't think people
down.
expected Mississippi State to spring the upset 2 weeks in a row. And given the Texas A&M lost again, maybe not that much of an upset.
Right.
But Jalen Hurts looks really, really good. 300 yards through the air, another 100 on the ground. He, I believe, is leading the SEC in rushing touchdowns and is 5th in passing touchdowns. For a true freshman, what he is doing
incredible
is just and still is doing that. It still has room to grow.
Yeah.
Which is the really scary thing, that he can definitely be a better more precise quarterback.
Scary.
Over time.
I know our friend Bud Elliott, SB Nation's Bud Elliott, tweeted out the future of SEC quarterbacking is actually pretty bright right now with Jacob Eason, Jalen Hurts, Shea Patterson at Ole Miss.
Yep.
I'm assuming Texas A&M will have a quarterback on their roster next year.
I wouldn't necessarily.
Who's to say?
Wouldn't necessarily
but yes, I think that's something that's new for the SEC, having that sort of promise. A team in the SEC that should be spoken of, and I'm sorry, is the Florida Gators, because
we don't have to be sorry. Florida won.
Florida,
I'm fine.
no, they won. I'm saying I'm sorry because we have to talk about them in the context of an SEC
the
championship
SEC
game.
championship race. As of now, I still think that spot's going to go to Tennessee. Tennessee beats Kentucky, despite I think Kentucky ran for over 300 yards.
Yep.
And I don't know what to make of the Tennessee-Kentucky game, to be perfectly frank. But Tennessee's only remaining SEC game is against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt has been a tricky team.
They have.
And they're good enough on defense that they could upset.
Yeah.
But if you're asking me who do I think is better right now, Vanderbilt or LSU, who Florida still has to play on the road.
Sure.
A very angry LSU who feels like Florida totally mishandled that whole I'm going to go with LSU at this point.
LSU emphatically destroys Arkansas.
Yes.
And this is a team that they've struggled with these past couple seasons, and they just ran the hell all over them.
Yeah.
Darius Geis and Leonard Fournette were wonderful. They once again allowed 10 points, this time in a win. And they get the traveling trophy that looks the hardest to transport in like a Honda Civic. Most traveling trophies, I'm like, oh yeah, you just like seatbelt it in the back seat. Like one of these.
Right. The boot looks like a nightmare.
It's unfortunate. Yeah. It's unfortunate. Elsewhere,
I'm also worried it's sharp. You know, looking at it, I'm like,
it's gonna rip a bag apart.
Yeah.
How do you? Yeah, I don't like that at all. Wisconsin takes care of business in comfortable fashion. Anybody else in the SEC you want to discuss? Mizzou,
oh boy, Mizzou won.
Yeah.
Our buddy Bill Connolly was at that game. So yeah, that's the counterpoint to Vanderbilt beating Tennessee. Couldn't beat Mizzou, so I don't feel great about that.
not wonderful.
Yeah, overall a not super meaningful. The most meaningful thing that happened in the SEC this week by far was Auburn losing. That eliminates all questions about who's going to win the West. That's sort of. I hope Nick Saban takes advantage of that and only puts in the second string and walk-ons against Auburn and sees what he can do.
He rested Bo Scarborough this past week.
Yeah.
And they ran all over.
And what sucks is that there is this feeling that we're talking about all this chaos and all these teams moving around, and it does feel like we're just sort of ignoring the tyrannosaur at the top of this particular food chain.
Western Michigan.
And yes, that's right. That's right. Row the boat with your tiny T-Rex arms. It is very hard, especially after this last weekend, to come up with a team that can even stay on the field with Alabama.
It's Ohio State at this point. That's the answer of the team we're most confident because of the level at which they're playing right now.
Okay.
So Ohio State blows the doors off of Maryland, which is not unexpected, but the good news is JT Barrett continues to look very comfortable. They are figuring out new and creative ways to get it to Curtis Samuel, which every time they do that, good things happen. Defensively, they are capable of defeating teams in a number of ways, whether it's pressure up front, whether it's turning teams over, defensive touchdowns. Ohio State right now, with the history of Urban Meyer's teams getting better over the course of a season and peaking in early January, late December, I think the answer is Ohio State. I think if we're talking about a team that has the best possibility of beating any other team other than Bama decisively, that includes Michigan, that includes Clemson, that includes Louisville, I would say it's Ohio State.
Okay, that seems fair. We're not on Facebook right now. So
we're not on Facebook, so we can't take questions.
Facebook questions.
Do you have any questions for me? Do you want me to ask you any questions?
I think we have.
Cliche?
It's not the X's and O's.
Oh, yeah.
It's the Jimmies and Joes.
I had wished that I pulled that out of the Iowa-Michigan discussion. It's not the X's and O's, it's the Jimmies and Joes. This also could apply to USC, who is just vastly more talented than Washington and made it happen.
That's brutal.
Adoree Jackson just baiting Jake Browning.
Yeah, he had a nice little game.
Oh, man. Teams where the players themselves.
Oh, I'll give that to Notre Dame.
Oh, okay.
Notre Dame, I don't think you're that well coached, but you have better players than Army.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Irrefutable.
Notre Dame is totally going to get bowl eligible just to make me miserable. Aren't they?
Yeah. Anybody else? X's and O's, Jimmies and Joes? Heart? Who showed heart?
Not Oregon.
Not Oregon. No.
Not Oregon.
You know what? It might be UCLA. UCLA had much better players than Oregon State, and they ran the ball.
Yeah.
Because their X's and O's are not great.
Okay. Let's wrap up.
I'm going to say Quentin Flowers had a nice game
For USF.
For USF. He goes over 200 in both the ground and through the air. Western Michigan remains undefeated. UNLV beat Wyoming 69-66 in triple overtime.
Eastern Michigan.
Bowl eligible.
Idaho.
Bowl eligible.
Oregon not bowl eligible.
Oregon is not. Okay. No, they're not as good. But what if a number of teams have academic issues in the Pac-12 and it just comes out like next week?
Okay, that could.
Maybe.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right, that's all the time we have.
Dream.
Keep commenting. We will answer any and all questions in the comments. Tell us who your top 4 is. Tell us if any of these cliches apply to any other teams. And we will keep the conversation going. Yay! His name is Ryan. My name is Dan. We'll see you next week.